Now, what we're going to put on top, just to help the glazing and the crunchiness of it all, is some Parmesan. Classic Italian cheese, often paired with pasta, and for very good reason, because Parmesan actually contains the highest known naturally occurring amount of monosodium glutamate. And that's the stuff that the Chinese use to enhance and pick out flavours in their cookery. And so I'm sure the Italians are adding it for the cheesy flavour, but what they're actually doing is enhancing all the other flavours as well. Right, it's going to take 20 to 30 minutes in the oven. There we go, one finished macaroni cheese, rocket salad, garlic bread, lunch is served. One of the largest cheese markets today is for snacks and processed cheese.
Cheese being a perishable product sort of limited the extent to which it could be maybe moved around the world. And so processed cheese came into its own as being a way of preserving even further the natural goodness in milk.
But how could its shelf life be prolonged? Cheesemakers in the 1900s thought that heat could provide the answer.
If you heat it up and pasteurise it, you get rid of some of the bacteria, so the cheese will keep.
But heating cheese was a challenge.
The problems with cheese when they were heating it was mainly that if you just chopped up the cheese and applied heat to it, then the fat would oil off the surface and you'd have a very unappetizing-looking product.
Food scientists discovered that by adding emulsifying salts, the protein in the cheese would bind the moisture and fat together.
An emulsifier is something that manages to connect the bit of fat with, in this case, protein in water, and so the whole thing is able to stay nice and stable instead of separating out when you heat it or process it.
One of the early processed cheese pioneers was a Chicago-based cheese seller called J.L. Kraft.
Now look, JL, when you heat cheese hard enough to make it keep, it's going to separate.
Not just a matter of keeping. If I can make this thing work, we can standardize quality.
The first cheese that they produced commercially in America were really 4-ounce tins, which they supplied to the army for rations.
Kraft continued to experiment with this new form of melted cheese, from tins to 5-pound blocks to the Dairy Lee triangle to cheese that didn't even need a knife, perfect for hamburgers. Even the French, the home of fine fromage, were making processed cheese.
Vache qui rit is a French brand, which means the laughing cow in English. And it originated in France in 1921. They were, at that time, doing Gruyere cheese, and they decided that they would melt some of the Gruyere cheese into those portions. That's why what we call a fromage fondu in France, which is a melted cheese, is here called a processed cheese.
But it was Kraft's Dairy Lee that really took off in the UK.
In terms of the way processed cheese has grown in to be part of our national diet, like so many things, we can blame it on the Second World War. And the cheese that we could get in this country, we were still under rationing then, was a thing called national cheese, which was a short-matured, hard cheese, 2 to 3 months old, with the flavour of toilet soap.
So when processed cheese hit Britain, it was a tasty and welcome alternative.